Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amanda. I am part of the communications team with the Transportation Alliance. We appreciate you joining us here today to talk about connecting with customers on Instagram and Twitter. A few housekeeping items before we get started. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on TTA's YouTube channel, as well as the Ride Local Massachusetts website. That's www.ridelocalma.com. You'll also be able to find a whole slew of resources on the Ride Local website to help Massachusetts taxi and livery operators and support the industry. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the chat feature or unmute yourself and ask your question during the presentation. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end of the discussion. And with that, we are going to jump right in. So today we're going to be talking about a couple different things when it comes to Twitter and Instagram. So we're going to talk through how to determine which platform is the right fit for your company. We're going to be talking about what should you post once you're actually on one of these platforms. And then we'll talk about tips for growing your audience. This is for current users, but it also can be used for new users who are going to be getting set up. If you are new to these platforms and haven't started at all, we actually have a new handbook coming out from the Transportation Alliance, How to Craft Your Social Media Presence for Success. This handbook will be available starting later today on the Ride Local Massachusetts website, and it actually walks you through setting up your account on different platforms. So if you have not built a page on these platforms, this is a great resource for you to get started. So let's start by talking about Twitter. So when you're looking at how you want to decide which platform you want to use, you're going to have to define a couple things. We're going to talk about this in a few minutes, but one of the big things is who is your key audience that you want to connect with. Now on Twitter has 199 million active users per day, sending out 500 million tweets every day. Now, those 500 million tweets, actually, it's ironic if you break it down, 92% of the US tweets in the United States come from only 10% of accounts. So you look at that and there's actually a couple accounts that are just sending a massive number, but your general Twitter accounts are posting anywhere from like 1 to 3 times a day, depending on what you're looking to talk about. So about 20% of US adults use Twitter, and I have a little breakdown here where you can see by age. It tends to skew a little bit younger as opposed to something like Facebook, where you're actually going to see more of an older audience. But for Twitter, it tends to be a lot of younger folks, and the majority of users are male. 63% are male. So when you look at your Twitter audience as well, one thing as you're deciding, is Twitter the right place for me to invest my resources, is 99% of Twitter users actually use a different social media platform. So if you're thinking to yourself, you know, I'm really interested in getting involved on social media, I don't have the resources to maintain multiple platforms, you do have probably a better likelihood of looking at another platform such as Instagram, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, where you are probably still reaching a lot of the same people you'd be reaching on Twitter, since those folks are on multiple platforms. And then one of the main reasons that people use Twitter is a news source. So in the United States, 17% of Americans get their news from Twitter as their primary news source. And so as you're looking and thinking through, does Twitter make sense for me? You have to think through, do I want to be engaged in the most like up-to-date conversations happening? Do I want to get involved in public policy conversations? Because Twitter tends to skew more towards, like we said, news and politics and policy. And then think about who your audience is. So do you want to connect with a younger audience, or do you want to connect with people that might not necessarily be in your community? Twitter is going to be one of those platforms where your audience could be anywhere in the world. This is a case for everything, but it's a little harder to target your audience on Twitter than I think it is for other platforms. But that's a little bit of a snapshot of who's on Twitter, and we'll get into more on if this is the right platform for you in a couple minutes. Instagram. So when we look at Instagram, Instagram has 1.74 billion active monthly users. Instagram is owned by Facebook, and so you have the ability to kind of cross promote things between a Facebook business page and an Instagram business page, which is helpful. Sometimes you can, for lack of a better term, you can kill two birds with one stone if you're looking at that. And then on Instagram, you actually have 500 million active daily users. And so when you look at Instagram, and we're going to take a look at what each page kind of looks like and dive into the details for each. But one of the cool things about Instagram is you have stories and highlights and different temporary videos that and content that you can post, which is an exciting feature. 500 million people are active daily on Instagram stories, and the majority of folks actually do find new companies to follow based off of hashtags that you're using, which we'll also get into in a little bit. As a business owner, you should know that there's 200 million businesses on Instagram, and people use it for all sorts of things. They sell their clothes they knit, they use it to promote their local businesses and shops, transportation companies use them, government officials use them, as well as government entities. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to connect with other businesses in your community as well as people in your community. The ratio on Instagram is more equal. It's 50-50 between male and female. And in the United States alone, there's 140 million users. 18 to 29 is kind of the key age group, although it does also go pretty high into your mid 30s. You'll see a lot of folks using there. Again, like I said, Instagram is you can tie it to your Facebook page, which is great because you have the opportunity to target a much broader audience, since, as we talked about, Facebook tends to skew older. So one thing for you to consider. Interesting fact, as you're thinking through the next generation of potential drivers, employees, leaders in this industry, 72% of teenagers who use Instagram say out of all the social media platforms, Instagram is the best way for brands to reach them. So if you establish your presence early and you connect with folks and you build that lasting relationship with them, that's something that they will take with them over the course of their lives. And then to get an idea of how often people visit business pages, 200 million Instagram users visit at least one brand page every day. So I know when I look at my Instagram feed right now, they've done some changes with the algorithm. So business pages are actually currently featured more than like personal pages. So something for you to consider as you're looking at who your audience you want to connect with on social media. So like we talked about, the first thing you have to decide is which platform is right for me. And the answer might be none of, it might be that Twitter and Instagram are not the right platforms for you. We've done these webinars for focusing on Facebook, LinkedIn, and we'll have some in the future coming down on TikTok and other new media. And so I'd encourage you to check those out. Those are, again, on the Ride Local Massachusetts website. And you can evaluate which one is the most meaningful platform for you to connect with. The handbook I discussed also will help you outline and identify which one's the right one for me. But if you're thinking about Twitter and Instagram, a few things to think about. So what are your goals? So here you want to know who do you want to reach? Are you looking to connect with other businesses in your community? Are you looking to connect with potential long-term clients? Are you looking to connect with individual users? And what is the purpose of using the platforms? Like I said, for Twitter, it would make a lot of sense for you to use Twitter if you're looking to get involved in your local public policy discussions. So if you want to have comments and conversations about gas prices or infrastructure or issues impacting your business on the federal, state, or local level, Twitter might be a great resource for you to consider. Instagram, because it's such a visual platform, is really going to help you to tell your company's story and create a connection with potential customers, and to also establish a long-lasting relationship with your current customers. We're going to talk about kinds of things you can post to help create some of this connection. But when you look at Instagram, it allows you to connect with a much wider audience. It would most likely be potential customers who are going to find your business looking locally. It can help you connect with potential drivers who are interested in connecting with your company, although I would say LinkedIn is probably the best resource for driver recruitment. I'd also encourage you, if driver recruitment is an issue that you are having in your company, to look into our handbook on driver recruitment and retention. That's on the Ride Local Massachusetts website as well, and helps you out identify strategies to not only recruit drivers, but retain them and build lasting relationships with them. So as you think about your target audience, we talked about, should it be customers, drivers, should it be business to business? And again, Instagram offers you all of those. Twitter does to an extent, but Twitter is going to, like I said, give you probably a much broader audience, which if you're looking to build a national audience, that's great. But if you're looking for more of a localized presence, that is harder to establish on Twitter. And then you need to think about which platform is right for me. So you have to ask, can I allocate the necessary resources for success? And what I mean by this is it's really important for you to identify at least one person in your office who maintains and is responsible for your social media content. This person should create a content calendar each month, looking at, here's all of the different ideas of what we can do. And we're going to give you some ideas for posts in a little bit. They should be responsible for engaging with customers on your social media accounts. And so these, I would say Google reviews and Yelp aren't considered traditional social media accounts, but this person should be responsible for also checking those, making sure if you have the negative reviews coming in, that those get responded to and handled accordingly. And so you can do this in-house. You can also hire outside companies. Mel Global, our communications firm, which we're presenting today, has the ability to talk through and give you some initial audits for your social media pages, and to talk through how we can be a resource for you. So that's one thing you have to consider is, do you have someone that you can designate to handle this on a daily basis? So that's important as you consider which platform's right for you. Again, Twitter, you see folks posting at least 1 to 3 times a day for normal like business accounts, not these ones that are tweeting a couple thousand times a day. Instagram, you have a lot more flexibility. Sometimes you'll see companies posting, 2 to 3 times a week and actual posts, and then you have opportunities for stories, which are easy for you to do throughout the week and save those. So the details, when you're looking at setting up a Twitter account or you have a Twitter account, there's a couple things for you to consider. So as you're setting up your page and as you're looking and evaluating your own page that you currently have, you want to think through your cover photo. So that's the long photo at the top of your screen. You need to think about what emotion and what feelings you want users to experience when they look at that. So, for example, the Transportation Alliance, we connect companies globally and operate all together to move the industry forward. And so our global and interconnected work is very important. So we highlight that. Also, you want a nice, clean, crisp logo, usually in your profile picture, which is the little circle right below. Well, it's not really below, but it cuts off part of your cover photo. You can also consider if in your cover photo, if you want to include your booking call center number, you should include that on there so folks don't have to struggle to find it. You'll also be able to come up with a very short bio for yourself. And this is where it can be a little tricky. So you have to think about what you're trying to convey. And a lot of companies look to highlight the fact that they're a small business. If they are a woman-owned, minority-owned, veteran-owned business, you can highlight that. Make sure you highlight where you're from and what communities you represent. And then you can look at including some hashtags to help get your profile found. So for ours, we have taxi, limo, paratransit, non-emergency medical transportation, so NEMT, and airport shuttle. So for us, those are all important components of our association and our membership. You can also designate where you're located as well as your website. And so when it comes to the specific details on Twitter, you're also going to be able to always look at people's tweets, and you can pin your most important tweet to the top of your page. So for that, you might want to do, if you have a Who We Are video, something super easy to produce that you can put on your website or on your YouTube channel. You can link to that and have your booking number and always have that at the top of your page. And then people will always be able to see your replies to other folks. So just keep that in mind as you engage in different conversations online. One other important thing to note for followers, and you'll see here that you can see how many people are following your account and how many people your account is following and how many people follow your account. This is a really good opportunity for you to find and engage new companies or potential customers in your community. So if you want to follow your local news stations, your local news reporters, those are great. If there's anyone who covers transportation, take a look and follow their pages. And then if there's other businesses or organizations and entities that you'd like to connect with in your community, make sure you see if they have a presence. You should also look at your local tourism board, as well as like resource centers, because they can help amplify your content. Instagram. So like I said, Instagram is an extremely visual platform. I would argue out of all social media platforms, Instagram is the most visual. TikTok has a lot coming, but I still maintain Instagram as the most visual. So I've got a couple examples here on the screen just to highlight a couple different aspects of what your page will look like and what you should be highlighting as you're building out your Instagram presence. So you're going to have a small profile picture. I would encourage you to probably just use your logo. One thing to remind you for Massachusetts folks is we can customize a Ride Local logo for you to fit for your Instagram or Twitter profiles or any other social media. That also includes your company name and phone number, so it's an option for you. You can reach out to us at info@ridelocalma.com if you are interested in that service. It's also listed on the Ride Local Massachusetts website, so you can sign up there. So on your Instagram page, folks have the option to follow your page. You're going to classify your company. So you could be a transportation service or a local small business. And then you have a very, very small bio here. And so here it's important to highlight your connection to the community. And then you can have a website. There's also the option on some Instagram pages for you to have a button directly linking to your call center and to your booking website if you have the opportunity for folks to reserve rides online. So you should look at that as you're setting up your page. And then the way Instagram is set up is it's lines of three photos, and it goes chronologically. So you'll see the most recent photos on the top left, and then they keep all of them. When you click on somebody's logo on the top left, that's where stories are kept. And so that would be if you want to do some cool features that you don't necessarily want to have permanently saved to your page, but they stay up for 24 hours. So you could do something like a day in the life. You could do an Instagram takeover from one of your drivers. Again, we're going to talk about some of these ideas in a minute, but that's an option for you. And so those disappear. And then you can see on the Mind Body Green page, underneath their bio, they have a couple little circles. So those are what are called highlights. And so if you really like a story, for example, if you do driver profiles, you can actually save your stories to stay there permanently in these highlight reels, and it'll stay on your page. And so customers can find them that way. So we talked about highlights, we talked about stories. Also, video content tends to do significantly better on Instagram than just photo posts. So something for you to consider is you're looking at resources. Do you want to invest in some sort of camera? We actually did a really great session on taking photos and videos with your iPhone or whatever smart camera you have, a smartphone, that you have, and would encourage you to check that out because there are a lot of things you can do just from your phone to create amazing content. So take a look at that. That presentation is in the webinar section on the Ride Local Massachusetts website. So now we've kind of talked through the details of each page. And you're probably thinking, okay, that's great, but Amanda, what should I post on my page? Well, there's a lot of different things you can highlight. The first category I think you should highlight are people, places, and things. And so as a local community or a statewide operator, even national operators, you have a deep connection usually to the community that you operate in. And almost every community has certain landmarks with them, right? So like my town where I grew up in Connecticut had a huge fountain in the center of town, super visible, everyone knew it, and it, they decorated it for different seasons. So it was always this beautiful area in town. You could easily post pictures of that and other areas that are recognizable in your community. You have a great resource in your company, in your drivers actually, who spend their whole day on the road and can send you some photos, some options. If you want, you can create some different incentives and choose like a photo of the month from drivers. So if folks submit things, you can incentivize them to help create content and share that content from your page and maybe offer like a little reward, a little gift card or something at the end of the month for a monthly winner. You should also be highlighting the people that are in your community and in your company. So we talked a lot about, not a lot, we talked about driver profiles. So did someone in your company have a new anniversary? Or did someone start with your company recently? Take a photo of them, introduce them to the community, and post that photo on your page. And that's a great way. So potential customers will be like, oh, I know you. I saw your picture on Instagram. You can also highlight different like employee events. If you do any driver appreciation events, holidays, make sure you recognize the folks who work in-house and behind the scenes, like your maintenance folks and your call center folks. There's a lot of great people you can highlight within your organization. And then for things, again, these can be anything from like an event happening within your community to, you know, if there's a huge snowstorm, for example, and you need to close down operations for a few hours because of safety reasons, post a picture of the snow and provide an update to folks and let everybody know when you'll be able to safely transport them again. So you can also think of it as an easy way to get out updates of if there's an issue impacting your company. And then other things you should highlight are wins and positive feedback. So I've got an example here of a company that was given a 5-star review, and you know, those are things that you can easily turn into a graphic. There's a lot of free resources like Canva that's my personal preference. It's very user friendly. You can create a free account. They have a lot of templates you can use, and you can use these reviews that come in, and you don't have to put the person's full name so that you don't have to get so that you can use it, but you should be highlighting these kind of positive feedbacks. Did someone send an email praising one of your drivers? Shout that from the rooftops, and you know, and create a quick little graphic and post that up on your page. So those are some initial post ideas, and I welcome any questions on that as we get into the question section. As we're looking at tips for growing your audience, so a couple different things. Images and video are the most compelling content. Like I said, video tends to do better, but photos still have a significantly higher engagement than posts that just have text. When you include text in your posts, you should keep your posts short and sweet. So try and limit your number of words. Twitter limits you, so you have no choice about the amount of content you use, but Instagram, you can be a little bit longer, but you still shouldn't really be writing long paragraphs. Be timely. So is there something that's happening in your community? Think through if you want to highlight something that's happening in your community. So for example, is there a new major opening of a mall or sports facility or something like that? That's a great resource for you to comment on. Is it your town's anniversary? That's another great thing for you to highlight. So you should post about them. Make sure when there's holidays, you're wishing your community happy holidays. And then again, be timely within your own company. Are you celebrating a work anniversary? Are you celebrating a significant milestone for one of your drivers or employees? Let's highlight those. When it comes to hashtags, Twitter is moving actually a little bit further away from hashtags and posts. You should limit it to 1 to 2 hashtags per post. Instagram's actually the exact opposite. You want to load up your Instagram posts with afterwards a lot of relevant hashtags, and that is how a lot of people will find you through the explore part of the app. And so a lot of people will find you through hashtags. And then, like we said, you should be responding to comments and engaging with your audience. So make sure that you're getting involved, responding to people. They thank you. If someone tags your company in a great content, make sure you're sharing that and giving them credit. So user-generated content, also you'll see that as UGC a lot of times, has a significantly higher engagement rate than normal posts as well. So think through how you can share user-generated content. And then post at the right time. So Twitter, like I said, it's a very fluid platform where people are posting constantly. And then Instagram, you're looking actually Wednesday and Thursday are the best days to post, and generally in the early afternoons, but I would encourage you to consider posting at least 3 times on your Instagram page per week, and then using stories to supplement that. So there was a lot, and I would love to open it up for any questions. If there's anything we don't cover today that you think of and you're like, oh, shoot, I wish I asked that, you can reach us anytime at info@melwoodglobal.com. So with that, John, I think we are ready to open it up for questions.
Yeah, we have a few. Hi, everybody. I'm John Boyd. I work with Amanda on communications with the Transportation Alliance. So one question, you alluded to it, or you were mentioning in the last slide, but just a quick recap. With Twitter, how many times a day is ideal to be posting, to be tweeting, and how much with Instagram? What would you recommend per day?
Yeah, so on Twitter, if you're going to use it to the most effect, you should be looking at posting a minimum of 1 to 3 times per day, because it is such a fast platform. So when you're looking at your news feed, you can actually literally blink and you'll have seen someone's tweet and then it disappears and you're like, yeah, shoot, I wish I saw that. So Twitter tends to disappear really quickly, so you're going to want to continue to engage in the conversation. When it comes to Instagram, posting daily is probably a little bit of a stretch as you're getting started and getting used to the platform. So I'd suggest you look at doing at least 3 to 5 posts per week. And those can be spread out both as posts and then as Instagram stories like we talked about. Those the stories are the ones that disappear after 24 hours. And so a couple ideas for that, you could ask one of your drivers to do an Instagram takeover for you for the day. And so they'd actually, and as an example, take you through from the start of their day, how do they prep their vehicle for the day, and then show you around town. They can stop and give you a little, they can do a straight to camera video saying, I'm in front of the town hall. This is our city center. You know, in the fall as the leaves are changing, since Massachusetts has some of the most gorgeous fall scenes, I would argue. Have them take some photos in front of some of the trees changing in your town. So use the resources you have to help build to help build your content so it doesn't all fall to one person to constantly be taking these photos and videos.
Here's another question. If we don't have a ton of experience with social media, do you have any advice for those of us getting started?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all,
Besides
congratulations on
handbook,
taking
right?
congratulations on taking the first step. Social media is, I think, such an important resource for companies, and it really is a great way for you to connect with potential customers. And so if you're just getting started, a few different things that might help. First of all, the Transportation Alliance is putting out today a handbook called How to Craft Your Social Media Presence for Success. This is a handbook that we will be posting to the Ride Local Massachusetts website. And it walks you through step by step as you're evaluating which platforms make sense for you and how to get started and how to think through the content that you want to post. So that's a great initial resource. Also, as you're thinking about getting started, really think through and talk to your team members about what is, what are the goals for this page? And then how can we get at it? And I think one of the best things you can do as you're getting started is think through the next few weeks and create your calendar so you know what's coming. So it's like what they say for planning your dinners out for the week, right? Then you don't get dinner anxiety at like 3:30 when you haven't figured out what you're having for dinner, right? And so it's the same concept, is if you plan out your month at the start of the month, you won't feel anxious that you aren't producing enough content. So that's, I think, one of the most important ways to help you as you're getting started, because it can be overwhelming and it can feel like there are so many different options. So it's hard to decide what's the best for your company. But again, take it back to what are my goals, who are my audience, and then what are the resources I want to allocate to ensure that we're successful.
Great. Here's one that I think no matter what industry you're in, everybody runs into this at some point. What if people start bashing me on social media is the question.
Yeah, we've all seen it, right? I mean, there's someone who just trolls your company, or there's someone who posts a really negative review that just spirals out of control. So there's a couple things you should do. And the first is we actually have a great resource for this. We did an entire webinar series on how to engage and respond to negative reviews. And I would include if you are being trolled online by someone with a lot of negative content. So you can find that webinar on our YouTube page, or on the Transportation Alliance YouTube page, or the Ride Local Massachusetts website. And so I'd encourage you to take a look at that. But I think a couple important things to highlight as you're thinking about negative criticism. So you're trying to set a good example for the rest of your audience. So when someone's upset, they've taken this very public stance against your company, you want to do everything you can to, first of all, acknowledge what they're saying, and don't blame them for what they're saying, but acknowledge what's happening, and then take it offline as much as you can. These conversations should be had in private. And so what you are going to want to do is thank the person who left the comment for their feedback. You're going to say you're going to look into what the issue is. You're going to provide them with a specific person who can help them resolve their issue and take this conversation offline, and then assure them that steps are being taken to mitigate the problem. So those are things that you want to all say publicly, and then you want to take the conversation offline, as we call it. So have them send you a direct message, But in an ideal situation, you get a phone number where someone on your customer service team or a manager can call them and talk about what happened and come to any resolution. So I apologize. So you're going to do that. And the biggest thing is you do not want to get defensive or downplay the person's concern. So this is an opportunity for you to not only show this person they should give you another chance, but assure other customers and potential customers that you care about your customers and you take everything seriously. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, but don't forget to check out our webinar that dives into this in significant detail. There's a lot of great tips and resources there for you to use.
Yeah, it's great. This isn't a question, it's more of a comment, but you know, I really like the pairing of Twitter and Instagram in this presentation. And why? Because they both influence extremely key audiences for you. And you know, as Amanda put up that graphic, Amanda, I don't know if you're able to go back to that graphic, those first graphics, the chart with Twitter and Instagram, you know, either one, we can start with either one of them. But, you know, I added up the percentage of US adults who use Twitter in 2021. Well, between 18 and 49 years old, that's 69% of people. More than 2/3 of Twitter users are in the 18 to 49 bracket. So hold that aside for a second. And then if you go to Instagram, between 18 and roughly 40, between 18 and 40, the mid 40s or so, it's even higher. It's like at 77%. I mean, it's 3/4. So the question I think for a lot of people to be asking themselves is, what's the demographic of your customer, of your passenger? And if the answer is a lot of them are over 50, then both Twitter and Instagram are representing places that younger generation, your customers of tomorrow and beyond, that's where you're finding them having conversations. But the other thing is about this is that, you know, so Twitter, well, actually, let me start with Instagram. You know, as Amanda said, Instagram is a great place to connect with customers because you're talking about things in your community. It's very visual. Instagram's really fun to scroll through and be visually engaged. And it's a great place. It's a great place to talk about your community, but also to talk about things that you do really well. You know, I've heard so many people say, especially recently, that, well, I'm gonna use the taxi industry as an example. The taxi industry right now, you know, they're very competitively priced. One might, I mean, I've heard many stories where they're much lower priced than some of the competition. And those are things that you can put out on Instagram. And because that younger audience may not understand that, like, hey, you can really take somebody to the airport for $15 as opposed to $25 or $30 that I might be spending on a competitor. You know, put that into a graphic, put that into something visual, and you are reaching a new audience. And then the second, you know, so that's the Instagram side of what we're talking about today. And on the Twitter side, the people who really like Twitter are, well, some of the people who really like Twitter are politicians and journalists. And those are very important to you as well, because that's where, if you want to advance a policy idea, or if you want to if you want to, you know, either compliment somebody in politics on something that they're doing right, or if you want to say, look, guys, we have a problem, or if you want to talk about regulations, onerous regulations, or things that are hurting your company, that's a great place to do it as well. Because simply, if you just tag them, if you tag a local politician, if you tag your regulator, if you tag your local journalist who's covering transportation, they're going to see you as somebody that you can go to, somebody they can go to for a comment and to discuss this, you know, this industry issue. And when I say tag, just for, in case people don't know, tagging is just you're putting you're including the handle, what they call the handle of Twitter. Like my handle is @JohnBoyd. You can but everyone who uses Twitter has that handle. It's just the @ and then whatever they decide their username basically is. So I think that these two platforms that we're discussing today, while they are very, very different, I think they are very important. And as Amanda says, it's really a matter of deciding which ones you want to use, and then putting the effort and the time, or allowing somebody on your staff or on your team to populate that platform every day and to make it meaningful. And because the sooner you start, the more influential you're going to be in the future. I mean, you can't start tweeting about something. Let me say, like, it doesn't make a ton of sense necessarily to start tweeting about something that you're upset with about regulations if you've never tweeted before. Because you could tag that politician and they're going to look at your Twitter account and say, well, you have 3 followers. So you're not that influential, right? But if you have 3,000 people or 30,000, they are going to want to pay attention to you more. So I would say start today, and a really good place, as Amanda said, is the handbook that we just released today. Just sit down and read that for 10 minutes. And it's a great way to sort of decide or start the decision-making process of, well, which one of these platforms, or 2 or 3, are we going to put our effort into? But I think the big takeaway here is this is where younger people are conversing. And if we're not in that conversation, then we're missing out on the next generation of passengers.
Exactly. That's great. Thanks, John. And John highlighted something important is, and we've kind of talked about this, but it does not make sense for you to be on every single social media platform. It would take a pretty massive amount of resources for you to do that. So starting by doing an evaluation of which platform audience you want to connect with is a great spot to start. And looking at your younger passengers is something that we would definitely encourage you to look at. So, were there any other questions, John?
Sorry. We had, I think there was one that I missed here. Wait a minute. Well, it's kind of a general question, but like, as a business, and I think that's the key, as a business, what are the pitfalls about Twitter and Instagram that I should be aware of, and how do I avoid them? I mean, obviously don't get into shouting matches on Twitter, and like, that's rule number 1.
Rule number 1. Yeah, I mean, there is an inherent risk for everyone, companies, especially when you put yourself out on social media, right? I mean, you're opening yourself up to a new avenue for people to comment and criticize your efforts. And I think what we talked about of making sure you're always positive and responding to feedback can help combat that in a lot of ways. But in our assessment, and I think you see this with how many companies just point blank are on social media. I mean, we were talking about there being 200 million businesses on Instagram. So there is a benefit of getting in front of folks who wouldn't know that you existed, This happens to me personally all the time, either through sponsored ads that I'm seeing from companies, or when I'm looking for a new topic, as I'm doing all of my holiday shopping right now, right? I'm finding all of these local companies through Instagram that I actually didn't know existed. And part of that is the reason why, it makes it worth opening yourself up to the negatives. Some other things for you to consider as a business is if you're looking at going for local contracts, establishing yourself as a leader in your community would be very helpful. And showing that, you know, you are the local team, that a lot of times will help with some of these business to business connections. And so that's important and can help get your company name in front of some of the more appropriate folks who are making some of these community decisions.
Yeah, and I think that was it for the questions, Amanda. And we're coming up on the end of the hour. Did you want to have any? Did you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom before we wrap up?
I know it can be really overwhelming as you're trying to think through all these different platforms, and you think, you know, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to allocate enough time and resources to start this and to build it out? And the most important thing is baby steps for this. Of, you know, once you start, things are going to start to come much more naturally. And so as you establish your protocols and operating procedures for determining these, it's going to become much more routine. And there's so many great things you can highlight in your business and people, and, you know, folks who want a behind the scenes into your company's operations. It's really exciting how many things you can do with this. And so I would encourage you to take a look at all of the different resources that are available to you through the Ride Local Massachusetts website. That's ridelocalma.com. We have a host of webinars that cover different social media platforms, and then we have handbooks available to you that cover not only social media and public relations, but also cover things like recruiting and retaining drivers and how to ensure your passengers and drivers remain safe. So there's a lot of resources. So please take advantage of the free resources for you as you're kind of getting started. And again, if you have questions, we're here to be a resource for you. So please reach out anytime, and we're happy to bounce some ideas off of you. Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present today, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.